Welcome to Adding Integers with Rules. If you've made it this far, you not only rock, you rule. You know you love it. Alright, before we jump into adding some integers, let's review some vocabulary. You probably remember absolute value. If not, let's get it down. Absolute value is a number's distance away from 0. We show absolute value with these two vertical lines. And you probably remember that the absolute value makes a number positive, and that's kind of true, but let's understand deeper. The absolute value of negative 5 is positive 5, but that's because, how rude, negative 5 is 5 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, away from 0. The absolute value of 8 is 8. The absolute value of 123 is 123. The absolute value of negative 3/5 is 3/5. That's how far each number is away from 0. I remember this by thinking about two kind of like cupping arms. They cut off the sign, they make it positive. You could also think about it like a washing machine. If you have dirty clothes and you put it into a washing machine, clean clothes come out. If you have clean clothes and put them into a washing machine, clean clothes still come out. So no matter whether we put a negative number or a positive number in, the absolute value is always positive because it's a number's distance from 0. That's going to become important in just a few minutes. Okay, so let's jump into our addition. Let's get your two colors. I'm using red and yellow. Yellow is positive, red is negative. And we're going to start out, I'm going to use the chip model, but if you prefer the number line, you could draw number lines instead. 5 plus 3 equals, well, this is an elementary type problem, but it's going to help us to understand middle school problems, so let's stick with it. Before we get started, let's actually answer this question. Are the signs of the numbers the same or different? Well, they're both positive, so they're the same. Let's see what happens when we draw a picture. 5 plus 3. I'm going to start with 5 positives. Don't forget to add a little plus in there to show that they're positives. And now I'm adding 3 more positives. Because they have the same sign, there's nothing to cancel out. So the sum is 8, because there are 8. And they're positive chips. Alright. Negative 5 plus negative 2. First, are the signs the same or different? Well, they're both negative, so the signs are the same. Negative 5 is our first addend, so I'm going to draw 5 negatives. And I'm adding 2 more negatives. There's nothing to cancel out, so that means the sum is how many we have is 7, but don't forget that it's 7 negatives, so the sum is negative 7. Okay? Let's do another one. 8 plus 1. The signs are the same. And when I draw it out, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 positives. Plus 1 more positive. There's nothing to cancel out. So the sum is just the 9 positives I have. And finally, negative 3 plus negative 2. The signs are the same. They are both negative. And I've got 3 negatives and 2 more negatives. Which means since there's nothing to cancel out, no 0 pairs, the sum is 5 and they're negative. So the sum is negative 5. Now we can draw chips for all kinds of problems, but it's better if we can think of a rule. Without drawing, how can we tell what the sign is going to be and what to do? Well, you probably notice that all we're doing is we're adding 3 and 2, 5 and 2, 5 and 3, 8 and 1. And then we decide what the final sign is based on what kind of chips we have. And that's how the rule works. If the integers being added are both positive or both negative, you will add the numbers together. Then take the sign of the problem. Okay, so you got that rule down. Well, let's find out what happens when we have different signs. Okay, down to number 5. Negative 5 plus 3. These don't have the same sign. They have different signs. Let's draw it out. Start with negative 5. 5 negatives. And now we add 3 positives. And all of a sudden we can see something's different here. Because we have positives and negatives, we can cancel out 0 pairs. And we're left with 2 negatives left. So the answer is negative 2. But I want you to be thinking, how could we decide that without drawing it? How could we determine 2 and negative? Well, the 2 comes from subtraction because we have 5 things and we need to take 3 things away. And the negative comes from the fact that there's more negatives here than there are positive. Negative 5 is further away from 0 than positive 3. And I can show that by using absolute value. Negative 5 is 5, and absolute value of 3 is 3. This tells us that the sign is going to be negative. And I like to put a negative over that problem just to indicate it. Let's look at the next one. 5 plus negative 3. The signs are different, and I'm going to start with 5 positives this time. Okay, and I'm going to add 3 negatives. There we go. And just like last time, I've got 0 pairs. I can cancel those 0 pairs out. And what I've got left are 2 positives. Again, let's think, how could we figure that out without drawing? Well, I've still got 5, and then I've got to take 3 away. So subtraction gets me 2. And then this time, they end up being positive because there were more positive chips than negatives. The absolute value of 5 is 5, and the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The larger absolute value tells us that this is going to be a positive sum. Okay, let's look at these. This time, before we draw the picture out, let's see if we can use this thing we notice. Negative 7 plus 3. Well, I'm looking at these two numbers, and the absolute value of negative 7 is 7, and the absolute value of 3 is 3. So that means that there's going to be more negatives than positives, and this is going to be a negative number. And then I would just subtract to find what that number is. So it should be negative 4. Let's go ahead and draw it to make sure that that's true. 7 negatives. There we go. And 3 positives. And I've got some 0 pairs I can cancel out. And what I've got left are 4 negatives. It works. Okay, let's do one more. Negative 2 plus 4. The signs are different, and I'm looking at these two numbers, and I see that negative 2 has an absolute value of negative 2, and 4 has an absolute value of 4. So that means 4 is the larger absolute value, which means it's going to be positive. That's going to be the sum. And I should subtract the two numbers together, because I'm going to have 0 pairs, and so that means I should end up with 2. Let's just prove it. Here's 2 negatives, and here's 4 positives. And like we said, 2 0 pairs, which leaves you 2 positives left over. All right, here's the rule for different signs. When the integers being added do not have the same sign, that means when one is positive and one is negative, you will subtract. Then take the sign of the number with the larger absolute value. Okay, I remember this personally like this. I remember that when the numbers have the same sign, well, actually I do it like this, same sign. Hopefully yours looks better than mine. Then you need to find the sum. That means you add. And then you keep the sign. At the the same time, if they have different signs, then you need to find the difference. Remember that difference means we subtract. And you use the sign of the larger absolute value. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Turn to the next page, and I want you to pause this video and try the problems on your own. When you're done, press play and then check your answers along with me. Okay, -4 plus -3. Each time, let's use the rule. I notice that these have the same sign. So remember, I'm going to find the sum, and because it's two negatives, then the sign, I'm going to keep the sign that they have. So the sign should be negative. So -4 plus -3, let's find the sum, it's 7, and they're both negative, so that means the answer is -7. All right, 45 plus 33, they have the same sign, and 45 plus 33, both of them are positive, so that means I'm going to have a positive sum. And if you need to, you can always do some side work to find that sum. 78, that's my answer. Okay, moving right along. -27 plus 72. These have different signs, which means we're going to end up finding the difference. We're going to subtract. And I'm looking at these two numbers. -27 has an absolute value of 27, and 72 has an absolute value of 72. That means the positive number has a larger absolute value, and the sum is going to be positive. I'm going to do some side work to find the difference. 72 minus 27 is 45, and that means the sum is 45. Okay, let's keep going. 8 plus -8. Well, I know these are additive inverses, so it should end up being 0, but let's just apply the rules. So they have different signs, which means I'm going to find the difference. And 8 minus 8 is 0, so it ends up being 0. Neither has a larger absolute value. Okay, -5 plus 13. They have different signs, and that means I'm going to find the difference. I'm looking at these two numbers, and I'm going to notice that -5 has an absolute value of 5, and 13 has an absolute value of 13. So that means my sign is going to be positive, because the positive number has a larger absolute value. So now I'm going to do 13 minus 5, which is 8. It means my answer is positive 8. Okay, let's do one more. 6 plus -14 plus 20. Okay, 3 different add-ins, but I do the same thing. Let's start with the first one from left to right. So 6 plus -14 here. I notice that they have different signs. So that means I'm going to find the difference. And the 14, -14, has an absolute value of 14. And 6 has an absolute value of 6. So that means here it's going to be a negative, because that is more negative than that is positive. 14 minus 6 is 8, which means I've got -8. I'm not done though, because I've got to bring this down, continue this. So I've got -8 plus 20. -8 has an absolute value of 8, and 20 has an absolute value of 20, which means this is going to be positive. And now I'm going to do some subtraction. 20 minus 8 is 12, which means the answer is 12. Okay, last one here, word problem. John scored 6 points in a game, then lost 3, then gained 10, and lost 12. Let's write an addition sentence to represent this situation. 6 points, a loss of 3 would be -3. A gain of 10 would be a positive number, so plus 10. And then a loss of 12 would be another negative number, -12. I'm going to put those in parentheses so they're clear. And we need to add these all together to make an addition sentence. I'm going to use the commutative property of addition to make this a little easier. I'm going to rearrange the order. I can do that since it's all addition. So 6 plus 10, those were his gains, plus negative 3, plus negative 12. Those are the losses. And now I can add the two together. So 6 plus 10 is 16. They have the same sign, so they're positive. And over here, negative 3 plus negative 12, they have the same sign, so they're both negative. Put that right there. Negative 3 plus negative 12 means I'm thinking 3 plus 12, which is 15, but it's negative. Okay? And now 16 plus negative 15, these have different signs. I'm going to write that over here. Different signs. So I'm going to end up subtracting them, and that's easy because 16 minus 15, that's just 1. And now I need to think, is it going to be a positive number or a negative number? Well, 16 has a larger absolute value, so that means the sign is going to be positive, and the answer is positive 1.